7 consecutive years of declining reserves ended in 2021. 5 consecutive years of rising reserves have followed, from 1.2 billion United States dollars to 6.5 billion United States dollars, from default to historical high, from decline to more than 5 times over. On the 31st October 2020, Republican President Hakainde Hichilema, not yet in office, told the world that what would happen in Zambia over the next 5 years would be the greatest economic turnaround in Africa's history. On 13th of May 2026, the Bank of Zambia governor stood at a podium and announced the highest reserves this country has ever recorded. That is not a coincidence. That is a plan being executed, and the numbers prove it.
So by the end of the quarter, which is in March, we had reserves sitting at $6.2 billion. This is not a small number. It's not a small achievement, because if you look back on our history in this, we have seen times when foreign exchange was literally, well, I wouldn't say non-existent, but it was such a challenge to do certain things.
In February 2021, Zambia's gross international reserves stood at 1.2 billion United States dollars. That was the lowest figure recorded in the Bank of Zambia's monthly tracking series, which goes back to 2010. It was the end point of 7 consecutive years of declining reserves. In 2014, reserves stood at 3.1 billion United States dollars. Every single year from 2014 to 2021, the number fell from 3.1 billion United States dollars in 2014 to 2.9 billion United States dollars in 2015, to 2.5 billion United States dollars in 2016, to $2 billion in 2017, to $1.6 billion in 2018, to $1.5 billion 2019, to a $1.4 billion in 2020, and finally to $1.2 billion in February 2021. 7 years of decline. Zambia was in default. It could not pay its debts. The economy recorded negative GDP growth of minus 2.8% in 2021. 5 years later, Zambia holds more than 5 times that amount. On 13th of May 2026, Bank of Zambia Governor Dr. Den Kaliadia announced that Zambia's gross international reserves now stand at 6.5 billion United States dollars. That is the highest figure ever recorded in this country's post-independence history. It beats every previous record. It has never been done before. This is consistent with exactly what President Hakainde Hichilema said on the 31st October 2020. He posted, and I quote, "Friends, what will happen over the next 5 years in Zambia will be the greatest economic turnaround in Africa's history." Many dismissed those words at the time. The numbers today do not allow for dismissal. From 1.2 billion United States dollars to 6.5 billion United States dollars in 5 years is precisely that turnaround. But what exactly are gross international reserves, and why does this matter to you? Think of them as the country's savings account in foreign currency. It is the stockpile of dollars, euros, gold, and other internationally accepted assets that the Bank of Zambia holds on behalf of the nation. Okay? This money backs the kwacha, giving it strength and stability. It pays for imports, services internal debt, and acts as a cushion when the economy faces unexpected shocks from the outside world. When those reserves are low, the country is exposed and desperate. When they are high, the country has power and options. At 1.2 billion United States dollars in 2021, Zambia had no buffer. At 6.5 billion United States dollars in 2026, Zambia has approximately 6 to 7 months of import cover. The internationally recommended minimum is 3 months. Zambia is more than double that threshold. The context in which the turnaround was delivered makes the numbers even more striking. During the 7 years of declining reserves from 2014 to 2021, Zambia was operating in relatively benign global conditions. Oil prices were manageable. There was no regional drought of historical proportions. There was no major European conflict disruption supply chains and energy markets. and yet reserves fell every single year. President Hakainde Hichilema inherited that position and then faced 5 consecutive years of compounding global shocks, a devastating El Nino drought in 2024 that cut maize production to 1.5 million metric tons, okay? A Middle East conflict that pushed global oil prices past $120 a barrel, persistent global financial uncertainty. Any one of those challenges alone would have given a lesser administration's reason to stumble. This administration faced all 3 and still delivered the highest reserves in Zambia's recorded history. When President Hakainde Hichilema took office in August 2021, Dr. Stumbeko Musokotwane was his very first appointment made before the rest of cabinet was even announced. The president said the appointment came after great consultation to ensure the right mind was charged with the responsibility.
It's been described as a purge of the defence forces and the police. Why was this such a high priority for you?
The first appointment we ever made was the Minister of Finance. And he was appointed alone out of maybe a cabinet of, I don't know the number, I don't want to review to you really, but we made that appointment to send a message that the economy comes first, trade and investment comes first in our efforts to reconstruct the economy, to reconstruct the social fabric of our people, which can only be funded by a functioning economy. Very important. Okay, to reunite our people, to reunite our country. Then the second aspect is rebuilding the economy, reconstructing the economy, for also to support the social sector. Now, we made the first ministerial announcement with the Minister of Finance. We don't want a single short learning camp. We want to get in business right away. You will see our choice of the Bank of Zambia government. So all of this is well orchestrated.
The 6.5 billion United States dollars in reserves announced on 13th of May 2026 is the most concrete evidence yet of what that vision executed with the right people actually delivers. What drove this turnaround? The IMF Extended Credit Facility Program, which Zambia completed successfully, disbursed 1.7 billion United States dollars in total support as Zambia met every reform commitment it made. The World Bank and Africa Development Bank provided substantial project inflows. Copper exports earnings at elevated global prices brought in significant foreign exchange. The Bank of Zambia made net purchases of mining taxes paid in foreign currency by companies operating right here in Zambia. Debt restructuring, which reworked over 92% of external debt, valued at 12.4 billion United States dollars, restored creditor confidence and reopened investment flows into the country. A strengthened kwacha, which has moved from 30 kwacha to the dollar in April 2025 to approximately 19 kwacha today, reduced import costs and supported overall economic stability. None of these happened by accident. Completing the IMF program required fiscal discipline. Attracting mining investment required stable policy. Rebuilding creditor confidence required the hard work of debt restructuring. Now, what does 6.5 billion United States dollars in reserves mean practically for ordinary Zambians? It means the kwacha is stable. A country with strong reserves can defend its currency. That stability is exactly why inflation has fallen to 6.8%, its lowest since February 2018, and why imported goods have become cheaper on Zambian shelves. It means Zambia negotiates from strength, not desperation. When you have 1.2 billion United States dollars in reserves, you take whatever terms and on offer because you have no choice. When you have 6.5 billion United States dollars, you can say no to bad deals, attract the right investors on the right terms, and push for value addition rather than raw material exports. It means the country can absorb shocks. Global oil prices have surged past $120 a barrel. Government was able to sacrifice 200 million United States dollars in fuel taxes revenue to protect citizens from the fuel impact of that shock, precisely because the underlying reserves position is strong enough to absorb it. It means investors see a different country, a country in default with 1.2 billion United States dollars in reserves is a country people exploit. A country with 6.5 billion United States dollars in reserves, a completed IMF program, a restructured debt portfolio, and falling inflation is a country the world wants to do business with. That is why 12 billion United States dollars in new mining investments have been committed. That is why PPP agreements are being signed across education, border infrastructure and roads, and why partners from multiple continents are at the table with Zambia simultaneously. 7 consecutive years of declining reserves ended in 2021. 5 consecutive years of rising reserves have followed, from 1.2 billion United States dollars to 6.5 billion United States dollars, from default to historical high, from decline to more than 5 times over.